This article is about the alleged extrasensory ability. Do you believe in this ability? Clairvoyance, from French clair meaning clear and voyance meaning vision, is the claimed ability to gain information about an object, person, location, or physical event through extrasensory perception. Any person who is claimed to have such ability is said accordingly to be a clairvoyant. One who sees clearly claims for the existence of paranormal and psychic abilities such as clairvoyance have not been supported by scientific evidence. Parapsychology explores this possibility, but the existence of the paranormal is not accepted by the scientific community. The scientific community widely considers parapsychology, including the study of clairvoyance, a pseudoscience. Throughout history, there have been numerous places and times in which people have claimed themselves or others to be clairvoyant. In several religions, stories of certain individuals being able to see things far removed from their immediate sensory perception are commonplace, especially within pagan religions where oracles were used. Prophecy often involved some degree of clairvoyance, especially when future events were predicted. In most of these cases, however, the ability to see things was attributed to a higher power and not thought of as an ability that lay within the person himself. A number of Christian saints were said to be able to see or know things that were far removed from their immediate sensory perception as a kind of gift from God, including Columba of Iona, Padre Pio and Anne Catherine Emmerich. Jesus Christ in the Gospels is also recorded as being able to know things that were far removed from his immediate human perception. In Jainism, clairvoyance is regarded as one of the 5 kinds of knowledge. The beings of hell and heaven, devas, are said to possess clairvoyance by birth. According to Jain texts of Arthasiddhi, this kind of knowledge has been called avadi as it ascertains matter in downward range or knows objects within limits. Rudolf Steiner, famous as a clairvoyant himself, claimed that for a clairvoyant, it is easy to confuse his own emotional and spiritual being with the objective spiritual world. The earliest record of somnambulistic clairvoyance is credited to the Marquis de Pisca, a follower of Franz Mesmer, who in 1784 was treating a local dull-witted peasant, named Victor Race. During treatment, Race reportedly would go into trance and undergo a personality change, becoming fluent and articulate, and giving diagnosis and prescription for his own disease as well as those of others. Clairvoyance was a reported ability of some mediums during the spiritualist period of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and psychics of many descriptions have claimed clairvoyant ability up to the present day. Early researchers of clairvoyance included William Gregory, Gustav Pagenstecher, and Rudolf Tissner. Clairvoyance experiments were reported in 1884 by Charles Richer. Playing cards were enclosed in envelopes and a subject put under hypnosis attempted to identify them. The subject was reported to have been successful in a series of 133 trials, but the results dropped to chance level when performed before a group of scientists in Cambridge. J. M. Pierce and E. C. Pickering reported a similar experiment in which they tested 36 subjects over 23,384 trials which did not obtain above chance scores. Remote viewing. Edit. Remote viewing, also known as remote sensing, remote perception, telesthesia and traveling clairvoyance, is the alleged paranormal ability to perceive a remote or hidden target without support of the senses. 36. A well-known study of remote viewing in recent times has been the U.S. government-funded project at the Stanford Research Institute during the 1970s through the mid-1990s. In 1972, Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ initiated a series of human subject studies to determine whether participants, the viewers or percipients, could reliably identify and accurately describe salient features of remote locations or targets. In the early studies, a human sender was typically present at the remote location, as part of the experiment protocol. A three-step process was used, the first step being to randomly select the target conditions to be experienced by the senders. Secondly, in the viewing step, participants were asked to verbally express or sketch their impressions of the remote scene. Thirdly, in the judging step, these descriptions were matched by separate judges, as closely as possible, with the intended targets. The term remote viewing was coined to describe this overall process. The first paper by Puthoff and Targ on remote viewing was published in Nature in March 1974. In it, the team reported some degree of remote viewing success after the publication of these findings. Other attempts to replicate the experiments were carried out with remotely linked groups. Using computer conferencing, the psychologists David Marks and Richard Kamen attempted to replicate Targ and Puthoff's remote viewing experiments that were carried out in the 1970s at the Stanford Research Institute. In a series of 35 studies, they were unable to replicate the results, so investigated the procedure of the original experiments. Marks and Kamen discovered that the notes given to the judges in Targ and Puthoff's experiments contained clues as to which order they were carried out, such as referring to yesterday's two targets, or they had the date of the session written at the top of the page. They concluded that these clues were the reason for the experiment's high hit rates. Marks was able to achieve 100% accuracy without visiting any of the sites himself, but by using cues. James Randi has written control tests by several other researchers, eliminating several sources of cueing and extraneous evidence present in the original tests, produced negative results. Students were also able to solve Puthoff and Targ's locations from the clues that had inadvertently been included in the transcripts. In 1980, Charles Tart claimed that a rejudging of the transcripts from one of Targ and Puthoff's experiments revealed an above-chance result. Targ and Puthoff again refused to provide copies of the transcripts, and it was not until July 1985 that they were made available for study when it was discovered they still contained sensory cues. Marks and Christopher Scott, 1986. Wrote, considering the importance for the remote viewing hypothesis of adequate cue removal, Tart's failure to perform this basic task seems beyond comprehension. As previously concluded, remote viewing has not been demonstrated in the experiments conducted by Puthoff and Targ, only the repeated failure of the investigators to remove sensory cues. In 1982, Robert Jahn, then Dean of the School of Engineering at Princeton University, wrote a comprehensive review of psychic phenomena from an engineering perspective. His paper included numerous references to remote viewing studies at the time. Statistical flaws in his work have been proposed by others in the parapsychological community and within the general scientific community. According to scientific research, clairvoyance is generally explained as the result of confirmation bias, expectancy bias, fraud, hallucination, self-delusion, sensory leakage, subjective validation, wishful thinking, or failures to appreciate the base rate of chance occurrences and not as a paranormal power. The search for a valid and reliable test of clairvoyance has resulted in thousands of experiments. One controlled procedure has invited senders to telepathically transmit one of 4 visual images to receivers deprived of sensation in a nearby chamber. Berman or Norton, 1994. The result: a reported 32% accurate response rate, surpassing the chance rate of 25%. But follow-up studies have, depending on who was summarizing the results, failed to replicate their phenomenon or produced mixed results. Bohm and others, 2001, Milton and Wiseman, 2002, Storm, 2000, 2003. One skeptic, magician James Randi, has a long-standing offer, now US $1 million, to anyone who proves a genuine psychic power under proper observing conditions. Randi, 1999. French, Australian, and Indian groups have parallel offers of up to €200,000 to anyone with demonstrable paranormal abilities. CFI, 2003. Large as these sums are, the scientific seal of approval would be worth far more to anyone whose claims could be authenticated. To refute those who say there is no ESP, one need only produce a single person who can demonstrate a single, reproducible ESP phenomenon. So far, no such person has emerged. Randi's offer has been publicized for 3 decades and dozens of people have been tested, sometimes under the scrutiny of an independent panel of judges. Still, nothing. People's desire to believe in the paranormal is stronger than all the evidence that it does not exist. Susan Blackmore, Blackmore's First Law, 2000. Clairvoyance is considered hallucination by mainstream psychiatry.